So no more trade lines, no more CPNs. Use your own shit, build your own shit. BBYB boo, BBYB boo.
After these messages, we'll be right back. This is a real B Rose exclusive.
So today's BBYB topic is contractual agreements. Yes, why are they so important and what do you need them for? Well, we know contracts are important because it allows you to look back on what you agreed to do at a later date once times have changed and things have evolved, and you may have even forgotten some of those terms and conditions. So it's always good to have contractual agreements anytime you and another person or another organization plan to do business together or any type of transaction. Did want to say that all contractual agreements do not require money be involved. You can have an agreement. You can have an agreement to do business together, collaborate, transfer information, um, as well as remain confidential in certain matters. Those are some type of agreements that you don't need any type of financial gain in order to go into agreement with. But however, most other contracts do have some type of monetary consideration in order for you to get involved in the two. For instance, some type of agreements that you probably never thought was actually a contractual agreement are things such as an offer letter. Yep, those are contractual agreements that bring you into and out of an employment agreement with an employer or a corporation. Other types are services agreements, lease or sublease, consent, meaning I consent to. Are you a consenting adult? Agreements and time and materials, non disclosure agreements, as well as indemnities. You guys have seen a lot of indemnities out here recently now that the COVID-19 pandemic has run through the course of our veins. Everybody caught COVID around this bitch. So now that we're all infected with the 2020 plague, everywhere you go, they say, if you die here because you caught COVID, we're not liable. We're not liable. You see that everywhere. Sign this death waiver. That's an indemnity, meaning like, oh, well, while you here, something happened to you, it ain't our fault. So other agreements that you'll know come into contact with on a regular basis or just as a consumer or a small business person is sales agreements as well as consignment agreements. One company gets a small percentage of your profit based on the number of sales. Why do we sign contractual agreements? The reason why is so that we can legally bind our agreements. Anything that is written down has in the state of Georgia, has 7 years of statutory limitations on it. Verbal agreements have shorter period of time. So once you write something down, it almost doubles the statutory of limitations on those terms of those agreements. So that's why it's important to write something down. A lot of people think you always have to have every contract written down neatly and perfectly. It's got to be, marginalized, and everything's got to be Times New Roman, and the font's got to be matching. You can write an agreement on a piece of paper, sign it, copy it, and you're literally in a binding agreement. So don't take it lightly how serious it is to get into an agreement once you do sign a piece of paper, because you will be crying out here like you Sukiyana talking about you sold your soul. Oh, I'm bad. Okay, so another important thing too is when you're doing contractual agreements, if you are going to be doing them on a napkin or informally with handwritten documentation, It is very important to ensure that you have two witnesses or a notary confirm that those signings are actually yours in the second party. So whenever you're getting into an important agreement, even if all you do is say something like, "Hey, I want you to sign this contract. Say once a month I cut your grass for $100 a month, or whatever, and every month I come in 12." The things like that are very important to do because not only does it make it more legitimate, but it also allows you to use those terms of agreements as collateral. It builds value within your organization. And I'll give you a brief example. If everyone who is associated with this podcast were to sign a waiver or a document agreeing to host the show on a regular basis, that would increase the value of your show because you see that everyone has made a contractual obligation to appear. So that means that you have talent. Talent is very important in the marketplace. It's used as collateral, and collateral is capital. So all those things just roll into one. And the more in agreements that you have on paper showing your steady flow of business, past agreements, things like that, it just makes you look more valid and more legitimate. Anytime there's any type of consideration involved, that's a good idea to write it down and get a signature on it. Today on BBYB contractual agreements, don't forget, if it's serious, write it down. If you think you're going to forget the terms, write it down. And if you want to make sure that everything's valid and it is legally binding in court, add a witness, add a notary to your documents when you guys sign. If you got more BBYB questions, you know where to get me, Shayna Von Shay, on IG, Facebook, Twitter, and your daddy's phone. Good night.